Hello everyone and welcome back to the Beatles Forever. Today we're going to look at Ringo and his sons Zach and Jason. They not only look a lot like him, but they're all drumming for a living. So let us take a look at the Starkey men and find out what led them to their careers. Well, Ringo Starr, and when he started loving drums, when Ringo was a child, he was very sickly, so being in the hospital so long must have seemed to be a bad experience. But somehow Ringo remained upbeat, and it was while he was in the hospital with tuberculosis he found his passion for music. There was a health worker, and that person was handing out instruments to keep the kids occupied, and it was at this time that Ringo found his passion for the drums. Elsie, Ringo's mom, was alone for a time after she divorced her husband, and later she found love with a man named Harry Graves. He was a good-natured painter and a decorator who had moved from London to Liverpool. He later got a job at a military base. Well, Harry had a love of music, and it was while he worked at the American base that he got access to American entertainment. So Ringo would take long walks on his way to and from school that led him past the music store. He had seen Gene Krupa, the drummer, in the movies and liked him, but never bought his records. In his family, his grandparents played the mandolin and the banjo, and Ringo would sing at family get-togethers. But going by the music store, Ringo saw a tom-tom, and he had to have it. So it's funny how things could lead you to your destiny, and once Elsie got together with Harry, it led to Ringo getting more involved with music. So when Ringo got out of the hospital, he was about 15 years old. He got a one-sided bass drum for 30 shillings, and he used firewood as drumsticks. It wasn't an easy way to have to play an instrument. And then he also used a flat tin for cymbals. Ringo was very creative, and he used a big biscuit tin as a tom and a shallow biscuit tin as a snare drum. And in 1957, his stepfather bought him a drum kit. He paid £12 for it, and the kit was complete, and it was about 25 years old. Ringo said the drum kit hit him when he played because he was so small, and the kit was so large. And Ringo said he didn't know how to play, he just bashed it around. Well, Ringo tried to take some drum lessons, but he found it boring. So he decided to play the drums in his room, which led to his parents telling him to keep it down because the neighbors were being disturbed. Well, if they'd only known Ringo would one day be a Beatle, they were here for some free music. But it probably didn't sound that great at the time. So then Ringo joined his first band, and it was called Eddie Miles Band, later to become Eddie Clayton Skiffle Group. In 1958, he borrowed money from his paternal grandfather to get a 100-pound drum kit. Ringo felt drumming was in his soul, just like George Harrison was possessed by the guitar. So then later, Ringo joined the Darktown Skiffle Group in 1959, and they later went to rock and roll and changed their name to the Cadillacs. The only trouble was that no one in the band considered music to be their main profession, and Ringo did. So that's when he joined the band called Roy Storm and the Hurricanes, and that was one of the hottest bands in Liverpool. The band mixed around with other bands in the area, and the Beatles and Ringo began to hang out, and it led to Pete Best being booted from the Beatles and Ringo taking his place, and the rest is history. When Ringo was asked if he would have been what he would have been if he hadn't become a drummer, Ringo responded he would be a drummer. He chose that career when he was 18 years old. Now we come to Zach, Ringo's son, and when he started to love drumming. Well, Zach's the oldest son of Ringo Starr, born on September 13, 1965. His mother, Maureen, said upon Zach's birth, "I'd like the baby to be like Ringo, but he need not necessarily follow in his father's footsteps as a musician." And Ringo agreed, calling his firstborn a little smasher, but he also revealed, "I won't let Zach be a drummer like himself." Ringo wasn't able to stop Zach because he started following in his father's footsteps early on. In an interview for ModernDrummer.com, Zach said, "Keith Moon was my first big influence, definitely. I wanted to play the drums because of Keith. When I was young, there was music all around me in my parents' house. You'd go in the living room and find stacks and stacks of LPs. I would spend my days listening to records. My dad took me to see T-Rex when I was 6. That was it for me. I wanted to be Mark Bolan. Then I got into David Bowie, and I loved all those 70 glams band from England like Slade and Sweet. Then when I turned 8, I discovered The Who's album, Meaty, Beaty, Big and Bouncy, and that turned everything on its head. It was so different, and it sounded so alive. It was bouncy." Well, Zach said he never actually sat at a set of drums with Keith, but they used to talk about the drums. Zach said, I asked him how he played the ride cymbal in the part of Glow Girl from Oz and Sods. It's an incredibly fast ride cymbal. And he said what he did was put up one cymbal and a piece of cork where the wing and nut would go, and then another cymbal on top of that, but upside down, and he would play between the two. That's the only advice he gave me, and I think he may have lied. The recording sounds like an overdub to me. But Ringo and Keith were good friends, and Keith gave Zach his first drum kit when he was 12 years old. The interviewer asked Zach about the drum kit, and Zach said it was the famous white and gold Premier kit, and that set was sold at Sotheby's for 12,000 English pounds. Zach said, I was a double bass drum kit with 11 toms. I was 12 then, and we lived in a village called Winkfield, Berkshire. The big Premier set was very safe. It was like having a wall all around you. No one could see me, but everyone could hear me, including our neighbors, who were trying to stop me from playing drums. I could reach all the drums, and within a year I was playing gigs with that kit. And then we come to Jason Starkey and how he got involved. Well, Jason Starkey was the second child of Maureen and Ringo. He was born August the 19th, 1967. His parents got divorced when Jason was 7, and he was living with his mother. The divorce caused him to act out. In 1987, at the age of 20, he was fined 125 pounds for trying to steal a car stereo, and he also appeared in court on drug charges a few years later. And then Jason joined a series of indie bands, and like his older brother and father, Jason is also a drummer. In the mid-'80s, he played drums for bands including Buddy Curtis and the Grasshoppers, The People's Friend, Empire of Sponge, and even one with his brother Zach called Musty Jack Sponge and the Exploding Nudists. That's quite a band name. Now we have tensions between Ringo and his sons. Well, Ringo said he had a drinking problem and his marriage was coming to an end. Zach said, to be perfectly honest, being Ringo's son is the biggest drag in my life, Starkey said. This was Zach Starkey, per the book Ringo with a Little Help by Michael Seth Starr. I'm always written about being Ringo's son, always classed in with him in every single thing I do. And if I do get successful, I don't want to live like my old man on a big estate and all that. He also said he rarely saw his father. Instead, he spent more time with Starr's friends, particularly Keith Moon. My old man was never there, he said. During my puberty, Mooney was always there with me, while my old man was far away in Monte Carlo or somewhere. Zach felt that his dad spent too much time abroad, and he didn't like it when Ringo married Barbara Bach. The resentment led to fights between Ringo and Zach, and Ringo eventually kicked out Zach. Zach didn't like being compared to Ringo, his father, as a drummer, because at that time he didn't consider his father a great drummer. Zach stated, my old man's a good timekeeper, one of the best, but I never thought of him as a great drummer, not really, he said. Ringo gave me one lesson, just one, when I was young. Then he told me to listen to records and play along with them. Ringo stated that he kicked his son out of the house, but he couldn't stand his son's arrogance any longer. Looking back, Starr said that the arguments were mainly trivial, but he didn't like that his son ignored him unless they were fighting. He said, I always loved him, I know that, but I didn't always like his attitude, he said. It didn't get very friendly living all together. In the end, I threw him out after a row. It was all stupid and trivial. It just began to feel that we were being ignored by this teenager. He would eat and sleep at home, but not talk to us at all. So I chucked him out, and he left for 6 months, and then he came back. And he lives now in a cottage on the estate, and we're much closer. So later, Zach got married, and then that also brought Zach and Ringo closer. He could see the similarities Ringo could between Zach and his wife, and when Ringo was married to his wife, Maureen. Nowadays, Zach's proud to call Ringo his father. It doesn't get tiring, he told Modern Drummer in 2007. I kind of rebelled against it when I was a teenager. I said some pretty stupid things. I'll be honest, it's great being Ringo's son, he said. He's the greatest living drummer, as far as I'm concerned. I couldn't find much information on Jason and Ringo having tensions, but Jason got involved in the music industry, and he's also worked as a road manager and drummer and photographer. And then he played a role in 2 family movies, Ringo Starr, Going Home film, and Who Goes There. Well, Ringo never had a single thought about what he wanted to do as a living. It was being a drummer, and he did just that. And it's funny that he didn't want his son Zach to be a drummer, but like Ringo, Zach had his own ideas. But Ringo's drinking caused a strain in the relationship with his children. In the year 1988, Ringo and his wife decided to get sober, and that helped heal the relationship Ringo had with his children. Ringo's love of drumming was passed on to his sons, and they are talents in their own rights. Ringo must be proud of them, but I don't think he'll relinquish his title as the best drummer. When asked about Keith Moon being a great drummer, Ringo said no, and he laughed. He was also one of my best friends. He was great. He had his style, and that style worked so incredibly amazingly for the band he was in. He was another one. Mine is like the complete opposite of the way he played, but the style made it work, and his style made the Who work. When he was asked about his heroes in drumming, Jim Keltner and Levon Helm, if they were better than him in their own way, Ringo answered by saying, well, it's not a question of better, it's a question of different. Jim Keltner is the most versatile drummer. I know I'm not that versatile, so don't call me if you're doing a jazz record. I'm great at rock and pop, and Levon and the band were like the Beatles band. They all had their style, and it just worked so well, and you can't imagine the band without Levon. So Zach is more like a powerful drummer like Keith Moon, so I would think that Ringo would feel they have different styles. Ringo is confident in his pop and rock style of drumming, and Zach's son, as I stated earlier, had stated that now he considers Ringo the greatest living drummer. So you'll get no disagreements from Beatle fans, and the song from Ringo's self-entitled album, Ringo, I Am the Greatest, comes to mind. Ringo has a style that's hard to duplicate, so Zach's inherited that drumming gene and is number one in his drumming style too. Jason has a career in drumming and is a photographer and a road manager. The articles I've found doesn't really mention how he does in his field of drumming, but he probably has that love of drums just as his father does. And may the beat go on for all of them. Well, I hope everybody's been having a good day today, and I hope that you enjoyed the video. If you did, if you could give it a thumbs up, that would be great. And if you haven't subscribed yet, if you could do that, that would be wonderful too. So I hope everybody tunes in again soon for another episode of the Beatles Forever. Thank you. Bye.